The month of May is perhaps one of my favourite times of year here in the UK. Gone are the April showers as we hit the back end of spring. There's definitely a taste of summer in the air. And what better pleasure is there than to take out those special cars? In this video we'll be visiting somewhere that I haven't been for quite a while, a place that's actually not that far from home, and where I used to film frequently. A place that's something of a mecca in the north for petrol heads, where you're likely to see not only the older classics, but also some more modern classics and retro cars. A place that attracts supercars and modified cars alike. By now I imagine many of you will have already guessed it. Today I will be on location filming in Yorkshire from the Motorist. Well, welcome back to Mark on Motoring. It's a May bank holiday and we're back at the Motorist. Despite being so close to home, I've not actually been here for quite some time to do some filming. Now we do seem to have quite a mix of cars. A lot of it is a sort of more modern and retro end of stuff. You always get a lot of supercars and things here as well. But amongst these we've actually found this lovely little MGB Roadster. Now I seem to think I may have seen this car before, but if I have, it was certainly a long time ago. It definitely stands out in this green colour. This particular one has got the roast style wheels, which I actually really like. Obviously the wire wheels are probably most people's favourite on the MGBs, but the only downside with those, well, other than the cost of course, is the maintenance. Someone I was speaking to who actually has a car with those on said that if he takes it out in the rain, it's a 5-hour job to actually get those wheels cleaned up and polished again. Maybe those roast styles suddenly do sound more appealing after all. As I say, this is the Roadster version. The Roadsters actually came out first, and then the GT sort of coupe bodied version, they actually followed a little bit later on, so those cars had a slightly taller windscreen as well. This particular car, the dashboard on it has actually been colour-coded to the car as well, which I think is actually a really nice touch. Now there's a lot more to see here today, so we're going to go and have a walk around, but as I say, I think it's going to be a hot sunny day by the look of it. I'm expecting it's going to be very busy here. Unsurprisingly, there's been no shortage of Japanese cars here as well. We already had a Subaru Impreza that left a little earlier. Couple of Mitsubishi Lancers, the Evos and the Subarus back in the day. I mean, anyone that was around in the 90s will remember the World Rally Championships with these two brands sort of jostling for top position. I've actually just had a chat with the owner of this fantastic Evo 5 here. So this particular car was actually imported from Japan only a few years ago, and it's actually had an 18-month restoration. Obviously the car had a roll cage in it and a few other things that had been done, bits of bodywork that needed doing. It looks absolutely immaculate now. I mean, this paint, there's not a blemish anywhere in it. So as I say, Evo 5, we've got a 2-litre twin cam 16 valve engine in there, obviously turbocharged, about 270 odd horsepower I think from memory, and obviously 4-wheel drive as well. Yeah, absolutely spectacular and really nice seeing that car here today. Well, this morning on the way in here I caught a glimpse of a couple of interesting cars in my mirror that followed me in off the roundabout. Haroon, you was in one of those such cars. Toyota Supra. It's a spectacular thing, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, I was just explaining to a gentleman over there. It's something I've always wanted. Yeah. And used to see when I was younger. And for me, it's like, when I think Toyota, the flagship model is Supra. Yeah. So I've always wanted one. I think they're a really good driving experience. Yeah. I think to a lot of younger viewers now, obviously, the car was sort of rejuvenated through things like Fast and Furious. Obviously, to
us of a certain age. I mean, in the 90s, the Japanese, most manufacturers had some form of sports car or coupe in every different size category. Obviously Toyota, we had the MR2 and the Celica, which were fantastic cars in themselves, weren't they? Obviously in this case we've got a front engined rear drive, a more traditional sports car, but we were talking some quite big performance for the day, weren't we, in these?
Yeah, well, the original Supra came in normally aspirated as well as a turbo.
Yeah.
And the turbo was well ahead of its time in terms of technology as well as performance.
Yeah.
And we were just discussing the brakes on the twin turbo, but actually only recently exceeded in terms of performance with the brake test.
Okay.
So Toyota really, I mean, don't quote me on that, I could be wrong, but Toyota really over-engineered these cars.
Yeah.
And yeah, excellent, you know, performance-wise. 2JZ, I mean, needs no introduction.
Yeah.
Having said that, this isn't a 2JZ.
Right.
There's something different about this car.
Right.
And yeah, but the Supra in all forms, whether it's NA, automatic, turbo, 6-speed manual, I think it's just a good experience to drive.
Yeah, obviously the Japanese were quite big on automatics in sports cars, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So the automatic itself was a good, I think it's 4-speed. But yeah, again, very comfortable.
Yeah.
It's a cruiser, you know, what you drive and just put your foot down and it'll reach tremendous speeds.
Yeah. So obviously saying this one's a bit different under the bonnet, so what have we got?
So when I initially bought this, I wanted, I mean, everyone wants a twin turbo, 6-speed manual.
Yeah.
I wanted anyway. However, realistically, the price had just shot up.
Yeah.
And they're unobtainable, well, for me anyway. And I do like working on cars, so I wanted a car from Japan that I knew was fresh import, no rust, solid example.
Yeah.
But I wanted the overall look to be OEM plus. So when I saw this, it was an NA.
Yeah.
So I bought it, it came here, and then I put in 1JZ. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Okay.
Alfa Sora.
Right.
So it's a 2.5 turbo with the R154 running gear.
Okay.
So it's a 5-speed manual out of a Sora turbo.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, it goes straight in, a bit of wiring issue to sort out. So it's actually a 2.5 single turbo VVTi 5-speed manual.
Right.
Yeah.
From memory, the Supras, were they always about 3 litre?
Yeah. So
is it a bit lighter on the front now than...
I wouldn't know. I mean, in terms of the two engines side by side, the NA versus a 2.5 turbo was heavier, but it feels, now it's got more power, it does feel lighter, you know, the whole car feels a lot livelier.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a big debate whether the 1JZ was a 2JZ. I love the sound of a 1JZ.
Yeah.
And when it's on, when you're driving the 1JZ, it sounds phenomenal. It sounds excellent. Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
Certainly nice seeing it out today, and it really pops in this white, doesn't it, in the sunshine?
Yeah. A friend of mine did all the bodywork on it. ADM Customs.
Okay.
Lovely guy. He does maintain most of my cars. I've got a couple of other cars as well.
Yeah.
Japanese ones. R32 GTI.
Okay.
Corolla 86. Celica Turbo. So yeah. I do love the Supra.
So you're collecting all the JDM cars then?
Well, what I can do, yeah. I love my JDM cars. I've got a soft spot for German cars as well, but yeah, I love my JDM cars. Yeah,
the JDM scene really does seem to have exploded in recent years, doesn't it?
I've always loved them, and I think for like, I mean, some viewers may not like this, but I do feel the Japanese cars are well ahead in terms of reliability and performance in certain respects.
I mean, think a Supra, even the turbo ones back in the 90s, the stock cars, we were talking what, 200 or 300? I know they used to downplay a bit, didn't they? But from stock, were we about 300 horsepower, give or take, maybe a bit less?
Yeah. So there was something called the Gentleman's Agreement in Japan.
Yeah.
Where each car was supposedly limited to about 270, 280 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
However, a lot of manufacturers will well exceed that.
Yeah.
If they were put on a dyno, and from reading online, a lot of these Supras were the turbos were like 320 brake, but labelled as 280 brake. So
the thing is, a lot of these cars, as I say, you were saying obviously they were sort of quite advanced in terms of the engineering, the quality of the components. Obviously, you had a lot of, like Mitsubishi, they had their flagship had all-wheel steering and all sorts of technology in it. But the thing with these cars is they're rolled out of the factory with give or take 300 horsepower, but in recent years a lot of these cars have been tuned to 3 times that amount of power, if not more.
Yeah.
And obviously, yeah, there will have been some components switched out, but essentially the engine blocks and things.
Unopened, I think, even the 1JZ, they can handle 500-600 brake horsepower with good tune injectors.
Yeah.
But unopening the engine and maybe changing the turbo injectors, ECU, you can run 600-700 horsepower.
Yeah.
Especially the 2JZ. Again, some people have done ridiculous figures.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. You can have a lot of fun with a standard engine without getting your hands too dirty.
Yeah, and think that, I mean, that is a lot of power even now. So to think this is going, 25, 30 years ago almost, phenomenal really, isn't it?
Phenomenal. Yeah. Unheard of.
Yeah.
You name me another brand or engine that can handle that power now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other marks I don't want to mention, but yeah, none of them were doing this. Yeah. From what I know, anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, the Supra is not the only Japanese car here. Tyab, tell us a little bit about this little pocket rocket that we've got behind us.
This is a 1994 Starlet GT Turbo.
Okay.
It's got a forged engine, hybrid turbo, QF LSD, coilovers, big brakes. Runs at 294 horsepower. So it's a good bit of fun, plenty of power to go.
Yeah.
And it's just been built up for track days later this year. The plan is to just get a couple of track days in and obviously go from there.
Yeah.
But I've been into them for 16, 17 years.
Right.
And we come from a company called ID Works in Huddersfield. And we started off specialising in body kits and parts for Toyota Starlets.
Yeah.
So as you can see, the body kit on this one is lower lip and the spoiler.
Yeah.
That's what we started off with many years ago. Now we do parts for all cars. So this has got loads of bits supplied by ID Works. Turbo kit, manifold, downpipe, all that sort of stuff. Boost controller, gauges, all that sort of stuff supplied by ID Works.
Yeah.
Luckily I get sponsored because my brother owns a company, so I get a good discount.
Oh, okay.
So he's hooked me with all the parts, and hopefully we get it out on track later this year and get a bit of fun out of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we did get the Starlet in the UK anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, so this is a Japanese import.
So this one does look a bit different, and I'll be honest, I'm not really that familiar with this gen. I remember the Starlets from the late 90s, and they were as good a car as they were never really a huge seller. But obviously when you see them now, they always seem to attract plenty of attention.
So these if you knew what you were looking for when they first came in, it was one of them sort of things.
Yeah.
That one there is a Mark 1.
Yeah.
So they're really sought after now.
Yeah.
These are both Mark 3s, so this one, because it's all white, it's not as valuable. The one next to us is the GT Advance, so they're like super rare. They came with LSD and a few modifications from factory, which kind of pushed up the value on them.
Right.
But, like I said, me and my brothers have been into them for the best part of 20 years.
Yeah.
We can kind of pull it apart, not a bolt restoration sort of thing ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't tend to do it anymore ourselves because we've got other jobs and other sort of stuff going on. So like this has been down to a company called SSA down in Birmingham.
Yeah.
They've done all the work for me, the mapping and stuff, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Brilliant 295 horsepower from a 1300 block that weighs 850 kilos.
Yeah, I mean, to anyone now with all these little 3-cylinder turbos that are quite highly tuned, that sounds impressive even today, but for the era of this car, I mean, that was completely unheard of. I mean, if you had a car this size with more than 100 horsepower, back when these were out, that was still considered...
So these were stock form 133 horsepower. Yeah. Came with a small CT9 turbo. Yeah. This runs on a TDO4 hybrid, what comes off a Subaru Impreza or a Mitsubishi Evo. Yeah. But it's been obviously modified, so it's got a smaller intake wheel, and so you can spool up a little bit quicker. You get full RPM about 3,500 RPM, and it pulls strong till about 7. Right. It goes really, really well once it gets going, but it's just getting the power down first, second gear, which LSD, any big brakes obviously do help you a lot. Yeah. The only thing that's left to go on it now is a re-entry Elba, which gives you a big advantage because they don't come with one. So once that goes on there, maybe a roll cage, and then we get it out on track this year and get some fun in it. Yeah. But I've had it up against a 370 horsepower Golf R. Yeah. And he won't going nowhere, which is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. The guy spent 30 grand on his car building it. I've spent the best part of 12.
I imagine this is probably quite a bit lighter than the Golf.
I think 850, 860 kilos.
It's nothing, is it?
Absolutely nothing, Yeah. Once you've got that sort of weight advantage, you're going. Once you get going, you're going. Obviously, Golf's got 4-wheel drive. Yeah. On front-wheel drive. This
probably doesn't need it really. Well, not on a dry road at least, anyway.
No. So once you get going, you don't need a 4-wheel drive.
No.
The 4-wheel drive only gets you off the line after. You're just lugging weight, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully we get it out on track this year. You know, get some videos out and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well, best of luck with it, and it sounds like you're going to have a lot of fun.
I hope so. I hope so. Hopefully I don't break it in any time.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll have fun putting it back together again.
It generally happens when you go track days, you end up breaking stuff, but you know, it's just one of them things.
Then you'll end up with a revised modification and probably make it even better.
Long-term plan is I don't want to sell it. The only reason I would sell it is for an R32 GTR Skyline. Yeah. But it's unaffordable. So with this, once this running gear gives up on me, it's going K20 turbo from a Honda, 500 horsepower, just ridiculous. Why not? You know, we're getting on a bit, but by the time I hit 40, 45, I won't be able to do it anymore. 35 now, so let's get good 10 years in. Yeah. You know,
have as fun while we still can.
While we can, before the back gives in on us.
Yeah.
That's great. We should be okay, man.
Right, well, smashing. Thank you very much.
Nice. Cheers. Thank you.
Perhaps one of my favourites of the large Japanese sports cars from the 90s was the 300ZX. Now, for whatever reason, these never seem quite as highly regarded as some of the other, some of the many Japanese sports cars of the era, but it's always been a bit of a personal favourite of mine. This particular version is the 2+2 as well, and we've got the T-bar roof in this as well, which was very much a thing of the time. This another interesting fact about these cars are these headlamps, because the Lamborghini Diablo, when they actually lost the pop-ups and went to a more conventional headlight, well, these were the headlights. That's where they came from. Some great 90s cars here that I just haven't seen for such a long time. Civic CRX Del Sol, again, such a blast from the past from the 90s. BMW, remember the E36 generation? Well, they did a compact version. Somewhat berated actually at the time, but I always quite like the look of these. Really interesting car, something you just don't really see anymore. And yeah, it's actually really nice to see one out. If Japanese cars are not really your thing, well, fear not, because there's plenty of European cars here as well. I've just had a look at a very nice example of a Ford RS 1600 Escort, which looks mint, absolutely showroom fresh. Of course, as regular channel viewers will know, I do quite like French cars. Lewis, you've got one such fantastic car here, 405 MI16.
405 MI16, yeah, I've had this just short of 2 years now. Brilliant car, love it. My other car's a BMW 335D, and I much prefer to drive this every day of the week. Yeah,
it's a familiar story that people prefer their older cars over the modern ones. So what was it that attracted you to this model then?
When I was 14, I knew somebody who had one of these cars, and as I grew up I thought it would come out of my head. It didn't, and I just knew that I had to have one of these at some point, and somebody local to me offered me to buy this car off him, and I couldn't refuse, knowing that there's only about 6 or 7 on the road at the moment. Yeah. I thought it's now or never. I either take this opportunity or I'm not getting another one. So yeah, I took it, and here I am almost 2 years later, and I've not regretted it.
So obviously they did the MI16. There was also the Le Mans, weren't there? That sort of a tarted up version, bit better, nicer spec, and then was it the T16?
There was a T16. Yeah. I believe that was only sold over the border, though. I don't think we had any of these in the UK. Although I think there's 2 knocking about that have been imported and are on UK plates at the moment. Yeah,
obviously any Peugeot of the 80s or 90s, anyone that's driven a car from that era will know they were renowned for the way they drove. In terms of power, obviously we're not talking the crazy amounts of horsepower we get these days, but so was it a normally aspirated, was the 2 litre in these, the 1.9?
This is the phase 1, so the phase 1's got the 1.9.
So that's the same,
I believe.
Yeah, so is that the same block as the 309s and the 205s?
No, the 205s had the 8-valve version, I believe. So this is the MI16, which is the 16-valve. So the Phase 1 had the 1.9 MI16, and the Phase 2 had the 2-litre MI16, so slightly different. And the Phase 2 shared with the S16, I believe, in the 306.
Yeah.
So this is actually shared with the Citroen Bx GTI.
Right, okay. That's where I weren't sure, because I did remember there was an MI16 205 sort of right at the end, weren't there?
Well, what a lot of the 205 owners did is they found one of these for scrap, because I think they were a little bit less desirable at the time.
Yeah.
Took the engine out and put that in the 205s.
It's a bit like the 309s. People that have driven both said a 309's a better drive than a 205. But I imagine, again, a lot of 309s probably ended up donating engines, because 205s are the one everyone wanted.
You know, if you go on eBay now, you'll find, well, you might not find loads, but you'll find a few 205s for sale. But if you go on eBay, you'll not find a 405, and I think, unfortunately, that's because a lot of them were chopped up for the 205s, for the engines to go in.
So power-wise, they're not mega power. What are we looking at in these?
I believe it's 160 horsepower from standard.
Which is more than respectable for the time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, 35 years ago that were decent, but you get little Fiestas whizzing about with over 160 horsepower now, don't you? So but it's not about how fast it goes. It puts a smile on my face. I like the sound it makes, and it's great at handling. It's still good at handling.
I mean, flip side, these probably don't weigh a great deal more than a contemporary, than a Fiesta today, anyway.
There's not much in them. So yeah, probably. Don't ask me how much it weighs, because I don't know. But no, you know, it's not about power for me. It's about the smile it puts on my face. Yeah,
as I said before, the Arthur's 406 V6 manual I reviewed last year. It does have a 405 in his collection, which is currently off the road. Once that car is available to drive, I have been promised to drive in that, and I am looking forward to it, because, again, if you haven't driven a French car from this era, you really do need to have a drive or something to understand how, even the lesser powered, I've driven a 1.1 litre 205, and even that, it will put a smile on your face, like no modern car will.
I love the design of it. You know, it's still now. I just look at it, and you know, for all anybody would know, I could be sat in a Ferrari and I'd have the same type of smile on my face sat in this.
Yeah.
You know, this is my Ferrari.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks very much for having a chat with us about it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Again, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know that I'm rather partial to an Alfa Romeo, especially a 916 GTV6, which this one is. It's got the Busso engine in. Marcus, you're the proud owner of this fine vehicle.
Yeah, I've only had it just under a year.
Right.
I got it in July last year from a guy in Scotland.
Okay.
So I had it shipped down. I was on the hunt for one for a year. All started with a little obsession of window shopping on eBay for one. And my mate said, there's one near me, sort of overgrowing in a garden in St Albans. And I was like, okay, interesting. Tried to buy it from the guy who wasn't having it. He's going to fix it over the sun. Still hasn't moved for a year. But then it took a year trying to find the right one. Found this one. It was on 68,000 miles when I bought it. It's on 72 now. So it's low mileage for some of them. Most of
it is.
100.
Yeah, well, Italian car owners do tend to like to use them as well, and quite spiritedly. So to find a low mileage example, this one again, this colour both inside and out, it's absolutely stunning. With so what's this paint colour?
This is Proteo red. It's metallic red. There is obviously the classic Alfa red.
Yeah,
I maybe would have wanted one of those, but red, I still like the red. And then over tan on the interior is a good combination. Most
of the ones I've seen have been either the black or red leather, so but I think the tan, it's probably my favourite actually, I think.
Yeah, the combination, had to get one with the red, and then the tan interior is just classic Italian, so had to be done. So.
Now I know there's obviously a Cup version, isn't there? And they do have a bit of a premium, but to be brutally honest, I don't know whether I can actually see the
I mean, you're paying for the badge. They are lovely, and they do command like 15-20 grand these days, which is a lot of money. When there isn't much else other than the plaque on it, and you get the body kit, which does look quite nice. But you can do a lot of the stuff, upgrades to this, it'll still handle as nicely. There isn't much in the ways of it. But
with regard to this Busso lump, there was a few iterations, I believe. Did they actually do a 12 valve in these, or were they all 24?
That I'm not sure about. I think maybe on the earlier ones.
Yeah.
Because there was this is like You've got the 3.2, which is the last hurrah of them, which went into the phase 3s of these, which have the ugly front, which no one likes at all.
Oh, with the offset number plates?
No,
was it?
It's got
because it's got the big grille, hasn't it?
Grill, which is,
yeah.
Is a bit of a
it's a nice front end for a 155.
Yeah.
But sorry, a 156.
Yeah, for the 156 and the 166, the ones of that generation, I think it looks good. But on this, it just ruins the look massively.
Yeah. I mean, Alfa got it right straight off. I mean, obviously with the bonnet open, we can't really see here, but this headlamp.
I'll bring it down.
Yeah, gas struts as well. Always a nice touch. So yeah, we've obviously got this traditional Alfa grille with the badge there. Obviously a bit of venting around here, but it's sort of it's understated, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got this sort of sheet metal work, and then these cutouts.
No, it's fiberglass.
Oh, fiberglass even.
The whole body is fiberglass.
So yeah, we've got this sort of very plain sort of looking bonnet, but then we've got these cutouts, and it looks like you've got the two headlights, but it's actually one unit. But it's a beautiful touch, and when you look down the side, you've got this sort of rising swage line that intersects the front wheel arch and then rises at the back, and then these really understated sort of elongated tail lights. And I remember pulling up next to one at the lights. In fact, I think it might have been the Spider version, but I remember pulling up next to one at the lights and just thinking that is a stunning car. I think
something about having a nice light bar on the back. Like the Porsches have brought it back, and it looks 10 times better than what it used to do. Like anything with like a nice long light bar, I think does sort of complete the back of a car.
I think these days with advances in LED technology as well, it's really come back anyway. But I think things like the thing with the Alfa is at a similar time we had the Fiat Coupe, and I saw that car in '94, I think, when they launched at the motor show, and I looked at it and it didn't sit right with me.
I know the engines in them, like 20-valve turbos, fantastic engines, but there's something about the styling that doesn't quite sit right with me.
The thing is, a couple of decades on now, I look at a Fiat Coupe and I think that's stunning. I love the design. Chris Bangle, weren't it, I think, who did the Fiat, from memory, I think?
He did BMW.
That's right, yeah. And it's quite often the case. There's a lot of cars now I look at that back in the day I didn't like the look of them, and a few decades on I really love them. But the 916 weren't one of them. This is a car that even from the moment I first saw one, it's absolutely stunning, and my mind just hasn't been changed in all these years. Beautiful, beautiful cars. You're a very lucky man, Marcus, to own this one, and I wish you many more happy adventures with it.
Thank you.
Now, one mad car I really couldn't pass by was this TVR Tusen. TVRs in the late 90s and early 2000s really were, they really did break the mould. From memory, I think the Tusen had the straight 6 with about 3.6 to 4 litre capacity, although again, I am no expert, so if you know different, do let me know in the comments. But it was just everything about these cars, the noise, the wild styling, and on models like this one as well, we had this sort of weird sort of shimmering paint, which was a bit of a thing of the day. I remember, I think Nissan did it on their some of their hot versions of their cars as well. And depending how the light catches it, in some lights it looks green, and at another angle the light will catch it and it'll look purple. So I really don't know if the camera's picking this up, but yeah, really, really do stand out in the crowd with one of these. And if you think the outside of the car were noticeable, well, the interior is every bit as wild as what the outside of the car is as well. It's really nice to see this Austin Healey 3000 here today. This one, the BJ7 generation, I believe. The BJ8 generation that followed this, actually, Sterling Moss's sister, Pat Moss, won quite spectacularly in rallying, having beaten not only all the women but the male rally drivers as well, which I think at the time was a first. Spectacular car, though. I think these were a little bit more premium, a bit more pricey than your offerings from the likes of MG and Triumph. So obviously developed by Donald Healey, obviously then he got his engines from Austin, and history was made from there. But like a lot of the British sports cars, back in the day they used to take these out to America onto the salt flats and break various speed records in them. But really nice to see this one out now, and the owners of this particular one have just come back from an event over the weekend for these cars as well. So great to see that there's still a good club environment and events happening for owners of these spectacular cars. So other than my Mark I Megane Coupe, I've not seen any other Renaults here today, until I've seen this Mark II Clio, that is. Now this is an early facelift one, and it's actually a 172 as opposed to the later 182s. One easy way of telling that is from the design of the rear bumper and exhaust. But more than that, this is actually a Cup edition. Now, I actually went to a launch of the Mark II Megane, which also featured a sort of mini launch for the 172 Cup back in the day. There was a few subtle differences over that of the standard cars. So wheels, for example, were a little bit different to the ones on the standard cars. But it's what the wheels are bolted onto, because this car has actually got a slightly wider track than the standard models. Of course, there were some things that you did lose, so you lost the Alcantara upholstery, you lost your climate control. I think you might have even lost air conditioning entirely on the car. It wasn't completely stripped out, though. You did get things like carpets and a radio. This particular car I can see has actually been modified, so this one's got a roll cage in here. We've got some racing harnesses and bucket seats as well. So to find a good original standard one of these now, well, you're probably going to struggle. I have seen the odd one, but they're really not a common thing. As you can expect, a lot did end up on track. In fact, a lot of 172s and 182s ended up on track, but the Cups even more so. Something else we lost, the standard 172s would have had xenon headlamps, where this car got the standard halogen lights. But again, all these little measures that Renault did, one, it helped keep the cost down. These were quite affordable hot hatches, but also the weight. Renault did manage to shave a bit of weight off, and these cars were quite phenomenal. In fact, I was talking to someone earlier on that said he was in quite a powerful JDM car, and he was barely keeping up with one of these on track. That's how agile these cars really are. A couple of older French gems hiding out here further down the car park. So we've got a Bx19 GTI, a car that back in the day I weren't all that mad on, but now I think this Bertone styling looks absolutely fantastic. They also did some 16-valve versions of these. I believe there was even a four-wheel drive one as well. Of course, these cars were very light, being that they had some sort of polycarbonate body panels on them, so very light even for the time. I think they were like 800, maybe 900 kilos, something like that. Really quite impressive for a family car. Again, fancy hydro pneumatic suspension on these, very much unlike the car that followed, the ZX. These were quite conventional, really. Just run-of-the-mill sort of springs and shocks on these, no fancy hydro pneumatics. This one, obviously, as you can see, is sat quite a bit lower, but obviously this car has been modified. You see the odd hatchback about, but I must admit it's a while since I've seen an estate one. We've got a couple of Fords here. We've got this Ford Mondeo, the ST model. I actually remember the first generation ones, the ST24s. They were quite a car back in the day. This particular one's got a lot going on under the bonnet here. It's got a few modifications. There's a lot of very shiny bits under here, and some hydro dipping been going on as well. But probably more me is something like this Ford Puma. I remember these cars launching, always fancied a go in one, and last year I actually got the opportunity to review one at last. I said, quite a car. I remember the TV ads with Steve McQueen in, and that legendary 1.7 litre Z-Tech engine that was sent over to Yamaha in Japan, and it got a Nakasil coating like Porsche used to use on the race cars, and as all quite an interesting story. And yeah, it was definitely one that was on my bucket list. So if you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend you do check that review out at some point. So here we have this lovely R107 generation of the Mercedes SL. The 280 was this sort of smaller engine car. There was also a 300, and I believe they were both the 6-cylinder cars. The larger engines, of course, being V8s. I imagine probably quite a lot of those would have gone to places like America. Again, this one's got an automatic gearbox, which again was probably quite common in these cars. I think they did a 3- and a 4-speed version. This car is actually in exemplary condition. It looks really, really nice. Again, we've got these sort of matching Mercedes hubcaps that just look so right on this car. Interior-wise, well, this one's quite subtle. We've got this sort of beige, part leather, part cloth interior. Obviously some nice walnut trim in there as well. But again, everything, the fit and finish just looks absolutely superb, as it always was on Mercedes back in this era. We've actually got some very tiny seats tucked away under here as well, though I imagine you're probably really not going to fit anyone in those. Now, the interior on this car, as I say, is quite understated. I have seen a few of these at shows over the years. There's a nice white one that Andrew in the local car club has got. But I have seen another one that had a sort of a mauve, like a green coloured upholstery, which sounds quite revolting. It actually wasn't. It did look quite good, but that seemed very much of the time where, obviously with an interior like this one, it probably is more timeless. The car that succeeded that was the Mercedes SL R129. I actually really like these cars. I think they're much more streamlined affair than the car that preceded it, and I think it's quite a timeless design as well. They don't seem to get the same recognition as the earlier ones, but yeah, I really like these. Incidentally as well, I was saying earlier how I'd not seen any other Renaults, and we've actually got a Mark III Megane Coupe over there behind this one, and I've just seen a Mark IV RS Megane go out as well. So today a supercar is almost an everyday occurrence. There seems to be one around every street corner, but back in the 70s, 80s, even the 1990s, that really wasn't the case. Ferrari's sort of entry-level car at the time was the 308, and even they weren't common, but this car here next to me isn't a 308. Because this is a Ferrari 512 BBI. So this was Ferrari's flagship car back in the day. Also, one of Ferrari's first attempts at putting a mid-mounted engine in a road car. So what we've got is the 512 Boxer Berlinetta, basically a flat 12 engine, sat on top of the gearbox, which is something that was sort of carried over into the later Testarossa. It weren't until the 512 TR update where they actually managed to get the engine a bit lower. A lot of the motoring press obviously did criticise that at the time, said it made the car feel a bit top-heavy, but really these flagships were more of a GT car than an all-out sports car. Obviously the party piece of this car as well is obviously this clamshell here. These cars obviously were a little bit flawed, as I say. It was an early attempt, so we had the radiators at the front and obviously the engine all the way back down here, which in any mid-engine car that can be an issue. It makes them a pig to bleed up, and obviously you end up with a lot of sort of cooling hoses and things running under the car, and obviously they can sort of perish and corrode over time, and it leads to all kinds of issues. You've also got an engine here that generates a lot of heat that is sat right behind those front seats. Now when the 512 Testarossa came that followed, obviously we got those big wide rear arches, and what that allowed Ferrari to do was to move those radiators back, which did help in some ways with the packaging issue. But again, this car still got a reasonable amount of space, again under this front bonnet as well. We've got a spare wheel tucked away under there, and there's still room probably for a small case under there as well, so it certainly can't grumble at that. And I just love this styling. Obviously we've got the pop-up lights, those amber front lenses, and that grille on top of the bonnet. Again, these 5-spoke Ferrari alloys, nearly every Ferrari sort of through the 70s right through to the end of the millennium had very similar designer wheels to those, but of course on some of these earlier ones we had these knock-on spinners, which are obviously infinitely cool. Also you can spot one of these against something like a 308 by this two-tone, so in this case it's the silver over black, and obviously many would have been red over black, but yeah, absolutely beautiful and a real treat to see one of these out in the wild. Probably one of the most unique cars you're ever likely to see at a show is this Alfa Romeo Sprint Zapato. They also made a convertible version of these back in the day. Styling was always a bit divisive, and that really hasn't changed. There's still one of these cars that you either love or loathe, but definitely a design classic. Also one of the first road cars that I can think of that has the use of carbon fibre in some of its body panels as well. We did have a Busso engine, but at this point they were still on a 12-valve rather than a quattro-valve head. Anyway, it's been a fantastic day here at the Motorist. Again, we've had quite a diverse range of cars. There will be some more events coming up, and hopefully this glorious weather we've had today is going to stay, because I have had a few car reviews that I just haven't been able to get done, so I really want to bring you some of those in the very near future. As always, if you've enjoyed it, do give the video a like, and again, a few of the cars that I weren't so sure about, if you know any information on them, drop me something in comments. I'd really love to hear from you. Again, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and hit that bell notification, because there will be a lot more videos to come along soon. I'll put a link up here for you to subscribe, and we'll also throw in a couple of videos for you to click on to watch next. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.